You may have walked through some difficult seasons. Maybe life didn't turn out the way you thought. Relationships ended. Opportunities slipped away. Were you mistakes that left you feeling stuck? But I want to remind you today, God never ends your story in defeat. What looks like a setback is only a setup for a greater comeback. The good news is, our God is a God of restoration. He doesn't just put the pieces back together. He makes them better than before. He specializes in fresh starts and new beginnings. Where you thought it was over, He says, I'm just getting started. Sometimes in life we come to compasses that feel like the end of the road. A job that didn't work out. A relationship that fell apart. A dream that slipped away. You prayed, you believed, you did your best, but still things didn't go the way you planned. It can feel like a full stop, like the chapter is closed and the book is finished. That's where the enemy likes to whisper lies, it's over. You've missed your chance, it will never happen for you. But the truth is, what looks like an ending is often the very thing God will use to launch you into something greater. With Him, there are no dead ends. What looks like a setback is setting the stage for a comeback. And what feels like a final chapter is often just a turning of a page to something brand new. Think about a seed planted in the ground. To the naked eye, it looks like it's buried, like it's lost forever in the dirt. Days go by, maybe weeks, and there's no sign of life. But hidden beneath the surface, God is at work. That seed is not buried, it's planted. In time, it will sprout. It will grow. It will bring forth more than was sown. Your life may look like that seed right now. Something ended, something closed, and it feels like you've been covered up, forgotten, overlooked. But in God's eyes, you're not buried, you're planted. What He starts, He finishes, and He knows how to bring beauty out of ashes. All throughout Scripture, we see this principle. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and later unjustly imprisoned. If anyone had a reason to think it was the end, it was Joseph. His dreams seemed shattered. His life looked hopeless. But behind the scenes, God was still writing the story. The pit was not the end. The prison was not the end. Those were just steps on the path toward the palace. At just the right time, God opened the door, and Joseph became second in command of all of Egypt. What looked like an ending was really preparation for promotion. Maybe right now you're facing a situation that feels like Joseph's pit or prison. Something unfair happened, someone walked away, or life just hasn't worked out like you imagined. But remember, the God who brought Joseph out is the same God who's working in your life. What looks final is not final. People don't have the last say. Circumstances don't get to write your story. God holds the pen. And He's already planned a new beginning. When Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt, they came to the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army closing in behind them. From a natural standpoint, it was the end. Trapped between the water and their enemy, they must have thought, this is it, there's no way forward. But God specializes in making a way where there is no way. He parted the sea, brought them safely across, and then used that same sea to defeat their enemies. What looked like the end of the road was actually the beginning of freedom. In the same way, what you're facing may look impossible, but God can open a path you've never seen. He can make streams in the desert and bring victory out of defeat. Sometimes God allows things to end so He can shift us into something better. If that door hadn't closed, if that person hadn't walked away, if that plan hadn't fallen apart, you wouldn't be ready for the new thing He wants to do. We often see the ending as loss, but God sees it as transition. He knows that if you'll trust Him through the pain, He'll bring you to a place that's more than you could ask or imagine. You may remember a time in your own life when something ended, and at the moment it felt devastating. But months or years later, you could look back and see that it was all part of God's greater plan. The job you didn't get made room for the career you love now. The relationship that ended cleared the way for someone better suited to walk beside you. The disappointment that once made you cry became the very thing that set you on the path to joy. What once looked like the end turned out to be a new beginning in disguise. God never wastes an ending. Every closed door, every setback, every detour has purpose woven into it. He is the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. But when He brings something to an end, it's never to leave you empty. It's always to transition you into something new, something greater, something that fulfills His plan for your life. There are moments in life when we go through things that just don't make sense. You did the right thing, you worked hard, you stayed faithful, but still the business didn't succeed, the relationship ended, or the dream didn't unfold the way you expected. In those seasons, it's easy to wonder why. Why did this happen? Why did I have to go through that pain? Why did I lose what I thought I would keep forever? The truth is, God never wastes your pain. He doesn't let you walk through difficulty without a greater purpose attached to it. Every tear, every trial, every disappointment is being used to prepare you for something bigger than you could have imagined. When you look at the life of David before he became king, he spent years running from Saul, hiding in caves, living in fear for his life. It didn't look like he was headed toward a throne. It looked like he was losing, forgotten, pushed aside. But those years in the wilderness were not wasted. God was shaping his character, strengthening his faith, teaching him to depend fully on Him. By the time David finally wore the crown, he wasn't just a ruler. He was a man after God's own heart, ready to lead with wisdom and humility. The pain he endured became the very foundation of his preparation. In your own life, the challenges you faced are not random. They are not pointless. God has seen every lonely night, every unfair situation, every battle that made you feel like giving up. And instead of allowing it to break you, He's been using it to make you stronger, to deepen your roots, to prepare you for the promotion that is coming. What feels like wasted years will one day be revealed as years of training for the next level of your destiny. Sometimes we think if God really loved me, He would have spared me from this pain. But love doesn't always mean protection from hardship. Love often means preparation through hardship. Just like a parent who lets a child learn to walk by stumbling and falling, God allows us to go through seasons that stretch us, that test us, that even hurt us, because He knows it's making us into who we need to be. Without those stumbles, the child in a child never learns to walk with strength. Without your trials, you wouldn't have developed the endurance, the faith, and the resilience needed for the blessings ahead. Look at Joseph again. Betrayed, falsely accused, thrown into prison those years must have felt like wasted pain. But every part of it was preparing him. When he was elevated to second in command in Egypt, he knew how to handle authority with integrity. He knew how to forgive his brothers instead of retaliating. He knew how to depend on God instead of his own strength. The very pain that seemed unnecessary became the training ground for his purpose. The same is true for you. That setback at work is teaching you skills and patience that will position you for a better opportunity. That broken relationship is giving you wisdom and maturity for the one who will truly value you. That season of loss is carving compassion and empathy into your heart so you can minister to others in their time of need. What feels like wasted pain is actually purposeful preparation. Think about how a diamond is formed. It doesn't become valuable by sitting in comfort. It's created under intense pressure and heat. Without the pressure, it would remain just another piece of coal. The same pressure that feels unbearable is the very process that produces beauty and worth. God is doing the same thing in your life. The pressures you faced are shaping you into something far more valuable than you were before. We often pray for promotion, for increase, for breakthrough, but we don't always realize that the path to those blessings runs through preparation. And preparation isn't always comfortable. Preparation often comes disguised as pain. Yet on the other side of it, when you step into that new season, you'll see that nothing was wasted. Every trial, every setback, every closed door played a role in getting you ready. It's easy to look back on life and think the best days are already gone. Maybe you remember a time when you were happier, when things seemed to fall into place, when you were surrounded by people who made you feel loved and supported. You might look at your present circumstances and feel like you've lost too much, like the future couldn't possibly hold anything better. That's the way the enemy wants you to think, trapped in regret. convinced that the highlight reel of your life is behind you. But God never runs out of goodness, never runs out of blessings, never runs out of opportunities to amaze you. If you still have breath in your lungs, it's a sign that your best days are not behind you. They are still out in front of you. Abraham was 75 years old when God told him to leave everything familiar and step into a new land. By human standards, he should have already lived the best years of his life. But God had something greater planned. It was in his later years that he became the father of many nations, that he stepped into the promises of God, that his legacy was established forever. Age, missed opportunities, even past mistakes could not cancel the blessings God had stored up for him. In the same way, it doesn't matter what you've lost or how much time has passed. God has a way of accelerating your destiny, of bringing dreams to pass quicker than you thought possible. Sometimes we hold on to the past because it's comfortable, because it feels safe. You may find yourself constantly replaying old memories, talking about what used to be, longing for the good old days. But you weren't created to live in reverse. God is a forward-moving God. He said in Isaiah, "See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it?" The reason you're still here is because there are new things He wants to bring into your life, things greater than what you've seen before. Think about Job. He lost everything: his wealth, his family, his health. If anyone had a reason to believe his best days were over, it was Job. Yet the scripture says the latter part of his life was more blessed than the beginning. God restored double what he had lost. That's the nature of God. He doesn't just return you to where you were. He moves you forward into more, into abundance, into blessings that outweigh the pain of the past. Your best days are not tied to a season you've already lived. They are tied to the plans and purposes God has written for you. He's not limited by your age, your education, or your bank account. He's not limited by what people say about you or what you've been through. He can open doors in an instant that change the entire course of your life. One opportunity, one relationship, one divine moment can launch you into a future brighter than anything you've imagined. When the Israelites were in the wilderness, they often talked about how good life used to be in Egypt, how they had food and shelter, how things seemed more secure. But they were forgetting that God had something far greater in store, a promised land flowing with milk and honey, a land where they could live free and prosper. Sometimes, just like them, we get so focused on what we've lost or left behind that we miss what's ahead. But God doesn't lead you out of something unless He intends to lead you into something better. You may feel like you've seen the best of your career, like the relationships you once had can't be replaced, like the joy you once felt will never return. But God has greater joy, greater relationships, greater opportunities waiting for you. The dreams He put in your heart weren't there to tease you. They were there to prepare you for the future. He's not finished writing your story, and the chapters ahead will carry more purpose, more fulfillment, and more blessings than anything behind you. Restoration is not about returning something the way it used to be. It's about making it better than before. When God restores, He doesn't just give you back what you lost. He multiplies it. He adds increase. He turns it into something greater. Human restoration tries to repair, patch up, and make do with what was broken. But divine restoration brings improvement, enlargement, and beauty beyond what was. What the enemy meant for harm, God takes and transforms into good, not simply replacing it, but enhancing it until it surpasses the original. In the story of Job, after all the pain, loss, and devastation he endured, the scripture says that God blessed the latter part of Job's life more than the former. Job didn't just get back the same number of livestock, the same wealth, the same influence. He received double. That is the nature of God's restoration. It is abundant, overflowing, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Job's suffering did not end with him barely scraping by or just surviving. It ended with him thriving beyond anything he had ever known. We often think if God would only put things back the way they were, we would be happy again. If He would restore the relationship, return the opportunity, or rebuild what fell apart, it would be enough. But God's ways are higher than our ways. He is not interested in simply rewinding your life to a past season. He wants to propel you into a greater season, one where the restoration is so complete, so overflowing, that you look back and realize the pain was only the pathway to something better. Think of a master craftsman working with broken wood. A person without vision might try to glue it back together, hoping it will hold. But a master doesn't just repair the crack. He carves, sands, and polishes until what was once broken becomes a masterpiece. That's how God restores. He doesn't just glue your life together. He refines it until the beauty outshines the brokenness. When the Israelites lost years of crops to invading armies and locusts, God gave them a promise through the prophet Joel. I will restore to you the years that the locusts have eaten. Notice he didn't say he would just restore the crops. He said the years. Only God can do that. He knows how to accelerate blessings, how to make up for lost time, how to bring you further in a shorter season than you ever dreamed possible. Years that you thought were wasted, years that you thought were gone forever, can be restored in such a way that you end up further ahead than if you had never lost anything at all. Sometimes restoration comes in unexpected ways. You may think God will restore your life by giving you back exactly what you lost. But often, He does something new. That relationship that ended may not come back, but He can bring someone into your life who loves you in ways you've never known before. That opportunity you missed may never return, but He can open doors so much greater that you'll thank Him for closing the first one. His restoration is not limited to replacing what was. It's about upgrading, improving, and elevating you to a new level of blessing. Consider how Jesus healed people. He never left them as they were. The blind didn't just receive their sight, they saw clearly. The lame didn't just walk, they leapt and praised God. The woman with the issue of blood wasn't only healed physically, she was restored socially, emotionally, and spiritually. She walked away not just whole, but better than she had ever been. That's how God works. His restoration is complete and holistic, touching every area of your life. Think about the times you've seen restoration in your own journey. Maybe you lost a job and thought it was the end of your career, but later found yourself in a position with greater pay, more fulfillment, and better opportunities than before. Maybe you went through heartbreak only to find that God brought someone into your life who treated you with greater love and respect than you imagined possible. In those moments, you realize restoration is not about returning to what you had. It's about stepping into something far greater. When God restores, He leaves no trace of the damage. The hurt may have been real, the pain may have been deep, but His restoration is so complete that it transforms the scars into testimonies. Where there was shame, He brings honor. Where there was loss, He brings increase. Where there was brokenness, He brings wholeness. That is the kind of restoration only God can give. It only takes one touch of God's favor to change everything in your life. Years of struggle, years of loss, years of being overlooked can be reversed in a single moment when His favor shows up. What would normally take decades to accomplish can happen in an instant when His hand moves on your behalf. We often think progress has to be slow and steady. That restoration must happen little by little. But the truth is, God can accelerate things so quickly that it leaves you in awe. His favor can shift what seemed impossible into reality, bringing breakthroughs that don't make sense in the natural. Joseph spent years in prison, forgotten and abandoned. It looked like nothing was changing, like he was destined to live out his days in confinement. Then, in one single day, everything turned around. Pharaoh sent for him. Joseph interpreted a dream. And before the day was over, he went from prisoner to prime minister. That wasn't gradual, it was sudden. That's what the favor of God can do, take you from the back of the line to the front. From obscurity to influence, from lack to abundance. Think about Ruth. She had lost her husband, left her homeland. and was living in a foreign place with nothing. From the outside, her future didn't look very promising, but God's favor was on her life. She just so happened to glean in the field of Boaz, a man of great influence and wealth. That one connection, that one divine moment changed the entire course of her story. She went from picking up scraps in the field to owning the field. That is the power of one touch of favor. It takes you further than you could ever go on your own. You may have been working hard, doing your best, but it feels like nothing is changing. You've been faithful, you've been patient, yet the breakthrough hasn't come. Don't be discouraged. Just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it isn't on the way. Favor has a way of showing up suddenly, when you least expect it. At the right time, God can open a door you didn't even know existed. He can cause the right people to notice you, the right opportunity to come across your path, the right blessing to fall into your lap. Years of struggle can be overturned in a single moment. Maybe you've been trying to pay off debt for years, and one opportunity comes along that clears it all at once. Maybe you've been believing for a child, and after years of waiting, God blesses you with more than you asked for. Maybe you've been overlooked for promotions, and suddenly you're offered a position that exceeds every expectation. That's how God works. His favor is not bound by time, effort, or logic. One touch can do more than a lifetime of striving. Sometimes favor looks ordinary. Joseph met Pharaoh because someone remembered his ability to interpret dreams. Ruth met Boaz because she was faithful in the field. David was anointed king while tending sheep. What seems like an ordinary day, an ordinary task, can suddenly turn extraordinary when God breathes on it. That's why it's important to stay faithful, to keep doing what's right, because you never know when favor will show up. Favor doesn't mean you won't face challenges. Joseph still went through betrayal. Ruth still endured loss. David still faced giants. But the difference is that favor always has the final word. It doesn't matter how unfair the situation looks. Favor will bring justice. It doesn't matter how long the delay has been. Favor will accelerate the timing. It doesn't matter how many doors have been shut. Favor will open the right one. When God's favor touches your life, it not only changes your situation, it also changes the people around you. The same brothers who betrayed Joseph bowed before him. The same city that overlooked Ruth celebrated her. The same nation that doubted David hailed him as king. God's favor has a way of turning opposition into support, enemies into allies, and skeptics into believers. You may feel like you've been waiting too long, like the years have slipped away without the breakthrough you've hoped for. But remember, it doesn't take years for God to make up for years. It takes one moment, one idea, one connection, one opportunity, one divine encounter can restore everything you've lost and give you more than you ever dreamed possible. There comes a time when holding on to the past keeps you from receiving the new things God wants to bring into your life. So often we cling to what is familiar, even if it is broken, because the unknown feels uncertain. We replay old memories, dwell on past mistakes, or wish things could go back to how they used to be. But God is always moving forward. He doesn't intend for you to live stuck in yesterday. When you let go of the old, you make room for the new. And that's when His blessings can flow into your life in fresh and powerful ways. The Israelites had to learn this lesson when God delivered them from Egypt. Even though they were no longer slaves, many of them still carried the mindset of bondage. They longed for the familiarity of Egypt, remembering the food and comfort, forgetting the chains and oppression. Their attachment to the old kept them from fully embracing the promised land ahead. It's the same with us. If we stay focused on what we lost, who walked away, or what didn't work out, we risk missing the greater things God is leading us toward. Letting go doesn't mean what happened wasn't real or that the pain wasn't valid. It means you trust that God has something better. You can't receive new opportunities while your hands are still clinging to old disappointments. You can't embrace new relationships while you're holding on to past hurts. You can't step into fresh vision while your mind is consumed with yesterday's failures. Releasing the old is an act of faith, a declaration that you believe God's plan is greater than your past. Lot's wife is an example of what happens when you look back instead of forward. God was leading her and her family out of destruction into safety and a future. but she couldn't resist turning back to what she was leaving. The moment she looked back, she was frozen in place. That's a picture of how clinging to the past can keep you from moving into the future. God doesn't want you stuck in what was. He wants you free to walk into what can be. Think about a tree in autumn. Its leaves fall to the ground, not because the tree is dying, but because it's making room for new growth. If the tree refused to let go of the old leaves, it would never sprout new ones in the spring. The shedding is part of the process. In the same way, some things in your life have to be released for the new season to bloom. What you thought was an ending may actually be preparation for a new beginning. Letting go of the old also means releasing old versions of yourself. Sometimes it's not just about what happened around you, but what happened within you. You may be holding on to guilt from past mistakes, shame from wrong decisions, or regret for what you should have done differently. But God's mercy is new every morning. He doesn't define you by your past. He defines you by His purpose. When you let go of who you used to be, you can step into who He created you to become. Peter denied Jesus 3 times, and the weight of that failure could have kept him stuck forever. But when Jesus rose again, He restored Peter, not by dwelling on his past, but by calling him into his future. Peter went on to be one of the greatest leaders of the early church. If he had clung to his shame, he would have missed his destiny. The same is true for you. Letting go of the old means choosing forgiveness sometimes for others, sometimes for yourself, so that you can step freely into the new. God always has something better in store. The new may not look like the old. It may come in a different form through a different door with different people. That's why trust is essential. You have to believe that what He is bringing is greater than what He asked you to release. Just as a potter reshapes clay, sometimes he has to press it down and remake it to create something more beautiful. The process may be uncomfortable, but the outcome will always be worth it. Letting go of the old doesn't mean forgetting everything that happened. It means carrying the lessons, the strength, and the growth forward while leaving behind the pain, the bitterness, and the regret. It means standing with open hands, ready to receive the new opportunities, new relationships, and new blessings He wants to place in your life.